Greetings and felicitations, children of technology. It's been a long year since I last been here, and yeah, I almost didn't make this video because I was very sick the last couple of weeks, and I feel like if you take too long to do it, you lose a bit of the timing, but it became a tradition here in this channel. Actually, that's the only kind of videos I'm doing to this channel recently. Although 6 months ago, around that, I made a video about my experience at Brutal Assault this year. And yeah, right now, December, once again, before the new year starts, I would like to talk about my favorite albums of 2024. As always, I'll talk only about the albums that I have physical records of it. And I'll start with the tapes this time. And at first, no specific order, just the order that I got it from my shelves. The first one is a death metal band from Scotland. I don't know how to properly pronounce the name. Team Voss, I don't know. World of Abominations. I got that one on tape. I know that there's a new edition out of it, as the cover album gives the vibe. This is very old school death metal. I know that although they are hailing from Edinburgh, one of the guys is Greek. I guess someone on the band is also Polish, so a little bit of multicultural background in Europe that met to do it. There's nothing new about this album. It sounds like Morbid Angel, it sounds like Benediction, and for people that likes death metal, old school death metal, this is a good album to listen to. Nothing remarkable, but very enjoyable, very fun to listen. As always, I like to talk about some Brazilian bands, and this one is probably one of the most hyped, most well-known black metal bands in Brazil in the last 5 years, Vazio. This is their new album called Necrocosmos. That's a very interesting art on the tape here. And Vazio became very big in black metal scene in Brazil after the release of their first album, Eterno Aion Obscuro. But the second one might be, in my opinion, not as good as the first one, but it's also somehow finding their own unique sound. The first one, someone would say it's very easy to track some mayhem influence on that, and this new one, there's already some elements of Brazilian mysticism here. Those that know what Kimbanda is might find some tribal elements here that might be easy to track. The lyrics are in Portuguese, and I think this is a very enjoyable album, especially for those that are looking for something non-conventional in black metal. The lyrics are in Portuguese. I think Necrocosmos is a very interesting record for those that are looking for some non-conventional black metal hailing from the other side of the world. Check out Vazio, and if you like this one, don't forget to listen to their first album that is also a very good release. Third one, also in tape. This is Forms Through Demonic Spell. This was released by Everlasting Spill not so long ago, like a month ago or something like that. And there are many bands that are related to it, musically speaking, that I'll talk about later, because they're among my top 10 that I always leave it for the end. For those who like death black metal, very brutal, inspired by Blasphemy, old Sarcófago, the old Minas Gerais scene from Brazil, and Ross Bay, this kind of music that people tend to call war metal. Forms is a great choice. Moving along, that's a German band. So like local band, I think they're somewhere close to Berlin, maybe from the Brandenburg state. This band is called Mistreu, and the album is called Gegendemonstration. This is a very unique band, mixing black metal with post-punk. It sounds a bit weird. It is a bit hard to find information on this band as they are blacklisted on Metal Archives, maybe because they are too much post-punk and not black metal enough, but you'll find some black metal vibes to it. This tape is very do-it-yourself, everything printed in blue paper. You can see that it's not properly cut. I mean, the lines are not straight, hand numbered. I think this was sold out very quickly, although they just repressed, I think, in a different color. Check this out, especially if you like both genres. Although it's hard to imagine post-punk and black metal mixing in a very good way, but this one is a one of a kind. Oh, passing through some CDs now. Another Brazilian band, although this one was recorded in Germany, and Guy's been in Germany for a long while now. I spoke about Motherwood last year. This is their new CD, A Fading Elegy. This was recorded this year, so it was not even 1 year after the release of their previous album. And I think that the mother of Yuri passed away. Yuri and Guilherme are the two main guys responsible for this band, and Guilherme was touched by that and decided to do some homage, and I think this album is a result of that, this process of grief, and it's also very do-it-yourself. I think he pressed it all by himself, doesn't even have barcode or anything. I think this one should be easy to get directly from his Bandcamp page. For those who like atmospheric black metal with some synth elements, check this out. I love Motherwood, I'm suspect to say, but as Guy's a brother of mine, so I think it makes it even harder for me to talk about it without getting too much into the personal relation that we've got. But this is a very good album, and I think it makes justice as a successor of the previous one, so everyone should check out. Well, keep on talking about CDs. This one, although it's with me for more than a year now, was officially released only January this year, I guess. The Deepening by V-Mode. Yeah, it was released by Prophecy Productions here from Germany, Norwegian black metal band, very avant-garde, and with this typical Nordic elements, and everyone who likes this kind of code-oriented black metal hailing from Norway would probably know that and probably enjoy that. I think one of the biggest sins of this album is that was released so early in the year that through the year it gets easier for you to forget about it. But we played with V-Mode in June in the UK this year. They performed a very solid set list over there. And there's a very funny story about this copy in specific. As Austere is also signed by Prophecy, last year when we played with Austere in Germany, they had it on their merch booth. And Tim from Austere has like thousands of different projects. You might know Germ, Grey Waters, and any others that he is involved with. And then I saw it there and was like, okay, maybe this is a Tim's new project. And I asked him to, and I got it from him. I was like, hey, can you sign it for me? But I didn't know that there was nothing to do with him, you know, and he made a very funny joke here. And Maybe the guys from Finland, if they see that, they'll be like, what the fuck is that? But anyways, it has to do with this tongue-in-cheek sense of humor that Tim has, and all this relationship that the guys from Ulster have with us. Anyways, I think it's a funny story to be shared. Moving along, this one is a Dutch band. It's very weird looking band. If you check on this picture, you can't understand what they're up to at all. This band is called Finalized. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it correctly. I know that in Dutch the V has the sound of an F, IJ has the sound of an I, so should be Finalized. And this is a mixture of, I don't know, let's say atmospheric black metal with some it's even hard to say, some post-punk, I would say, post-hardcore, I don't know. Anyone who's familiar with the band Gold, also from the Netherlands, it is a mixture of Gold with Luisteraars. So for everyone who likes Dolch, German Dolch, and Woven Nest from Belgium, this is a great album, like black metal riffing, female vocals, not shrieking vocals at all. And I think this was a very unique release this year. They're playing next year on Roadburn, so that's how a friend of mine found them out, and he sent it to me. I was like, hey, I think you're gonna dig that, and he was correct. So thank you, Chimbo, for recommending me that. It's also out by Prophecy, as was Vimud that I just mentioned. And let's keep on going. Another one came a little bit out of the blue, and although it was one of the most expected albums, judging by the previous ones that put their name among one of the most unique and one-of-a-kind bands of the genre, which is Ungfäll from Switzerland. This album is called De Gurnd. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it correctly as well. I don't speak the dialect. And this, as I mentioned, came very out of the blue because it was not announced, although they released a single, and out of a sudden it was like, hey, the new album is out, you can directly order it. So, got my copy. I must say, I heard it maybe 2 times ever since it came here. It is good, very good to listen to, but it's also a little bit easy to forget. Not like the previous albums that I think has some masterpieces on it, among the best recordings in black metal. For people that like the French Peste Noire, will find some resemblance with their sound. Although this one is a bit different, this is a bit more conventional, I would say. But anyway, it's not by any means a bad album. Maybe it will take more time to click with me, but it was recently released, so it might take a little bit of time until I'm fully convinced by it. But for a first listen, it has some great value. I just miss this animal sounding, farming sounding, and the shrieking vocals that they used to have before, that somehow sounded a little bit like Urfaust. And anyways, the opposite hand of that, this one is the new Panzerfaust album, The Sons of Perdition. This is the chapter 4. This album, as I mentioned with Ungfäll, this one has the opposite effect on me. The more I listen to this album, the more I like it. And if it was released a couple months before than it was, I would probably place this album among my favorites of the year. We played also with Panzerfaust. Outlaw played with Panzerfaust last year on a festival in the Netherlands, and I think they played one of the songs that was released here, maybe the fourth track, because I remember that that gig was resonating through me. It was such a powerful, solid performance, and this year when I listened to this, it reminded me of that moment in which I first heard it, this track. I don't know if it is the same track, but anyways, I hope it is. I hope I'm not saying anything bad about it. People that like dissonant black metal, in the vein of Deathspell Omega, should definitely check this out. The last two records, so the Ungfell and this one, were released by Hálios, who also released the first vinyl press of Thy Light Suicide Depression, so it's a label I'm familiar with. And moving ahead, so this one was a very spoken album recently because of some back to root elements, someone would call it, which is Opeth's The Last Will and Testament. Alright, let me find a good spot here. So this album, I think this is the 14th or 13th album in Opeth's career, and after 14 years, there's finally some guttural, growling voices again, recorded by Michael Åkerfeldt. So some people say like, oh, they're going back to their death metal origins, but to be honest, I don't think so. I think this is might be their proggiest album in terms of how intricate this is. There's a lot of influences of jazz and fusion here, and it was quite unique for me. Although I'm a big fan of the old releases from Opeth, and I like the newest stuff, but not as much as the older ones. The tracks that has more growling here are the ones I like the least, to be honest. The last track, which is the only one that has a title, I think it's called A Story Never Told, is the most mellow song in the album, but probably my favorite one. So people that listened to Damnation 20 years ago will know what I'm talking about. And anyways, it's a good album. Opeth doesn't release bad albums, but I know that their fan base tends to hype so much everything that they do that it becomes a bit boring for people that are not among that inner circle to be talking about Opeth. But anyways, it's a great album, and I'm glad I got it. Next one. After the release of two albums that I was not a big fan, I mean, I like it, but I thought it was more of the same. This one is the fifth album of a band that I was really fond of in their first two albums, which is Lucifer from Sweden-Germany, band of Johanna Zadonis and Nick Anderson, from more well known from Entombed. I don't even know how to properly label that. I would say doom metal, doom rock, although it's not very psychedelic, not stonerish anyways, but it has some vibes to it, and I really enjoyed this album. Anyways, it reminds me of the time that Lucifer 2 came out, that every song was an ear catcher and you would be singing along to it after the second time you heard it. And I think that Lucifer 5 finally brings that feeling back, you know, that you listen to it and out of a sudden you know how to sing every song, even if you never check the insert of the album. So it was an album that I knew that I should have from the first time I listened to it. And it's probably the album of 2024 that I most listen to, because it's probably the one that's most fun to listen to. Although it didn't make to the top 10, Lucifer is always a band that you know that you won't miss by checking them out, because Johanna's voice plus all the instrumental, rocky instrumental, the doomy vibes of it, in a way that mixes a little bit of, I don't know, this Coven feelings from the 70s and some Black Sabbath from the 70s. Anyways, you won't be disappointed by Lucifer if you like that kind of stuff. For fans of Pentagram, Count Raven, and early Sabbath, Coven, Lucifer is a great album to check out. And it's easy to find it as it was released by Nuclear Blast. So, next one. This one is a controversial one, I guess. Even gonna drink a beer before I start talking about it. Well, this is a band that everyone who knows me knows that I tend to say that they are maybe not the best, but probably the most influential metal band from the recent years. By recent, I mean the last 10. In a sense that they added something new to metal, and so many bands started sounding like them even when they didn't want to. But now, guess who doesn't sound like them anymore? Themselves. I'm talking about Tribulation. This album is Sub Rosa in Aeternum, and it's the first album released after the departure of the main composer, who was their previous guitar player. So the first time they have like this clean faces on their album, and somehow they stopped playing that, I don't know, mixture of gothic metal with death metal and some evilness that resonated from latest albums from Dissection. This is almost basically a post-punk metal album. It is hard to describe. Let's say it has the post-punk vibes to it. It has the gothic vibes more than everything to it. I mean, even the cover, you can check this out and know more or less what about it is. And although the songs grow on you, and I think that Saturn Coming Down and Hungry Waters are probably the best tracks of this album. I remember when Saturn Coming Down clip was released, I checked this out and I was like, oh, this is great. You still have some shrieking voices here, a bit there and there, but it is not the main focus on this album. Is it as good as Down Below or the previous one that was more gothic in its approach? No, it is not, but it's still a good album, and it's still worth checking out. And I still think Tribulation might be one of the most important metal bands of our time. And it's always a pleasure listening to something new from them. And yeah, I think this album makes justice to the band by itself, although it is something new. But as a band who started as a traditional, let's say, death metal band, they already changed a lot through the years. So this is not unexpected for people that know what they're up to in the last 5 years, I would say. Next one. Okay, this is a new band. I think this is an international project. I don't know exactly from which country they're hailing from. maybe, I know that there are American musicians here, Norwegian, maybe Icelandic as well. I don't know how to properly pronounce the name of the band. Parfaxitas, 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 I don't know. Yeah, this album, Weaver of the Black Moon. This is also some dissonant black metal. It's in the vein of Hálios, the first black metal album, Melino. And I think this is the best Hálios release of the year, because the new Hálios is not as good as its predecessor, although this one is close. And I think this was released by Van Records, maybe? No, I got it from Van Records, but it's Terratur Possessions. I think they have some sort of partnership. It has a matte finish. It's a very beautiful artwork, and I'm afraid that because of the light I can't properly show it, but it has some glossy embossing on their logo here on the back. Here on the front you have like some framing, and I love that art, and the album sounds just as good. So if you like this extreme, intricate black metal, go for it. You're not gonna regret. Still talking about black metal. This one might be one of the most expected albums from me, although maybe I expected more, because my expectations are always too high when we're talking about Paisage d'Hiver. That's the new album, Die Berge. And anyways, it sounds exactly like it always sounds, you know, atmospheric, monotone, everything stretched to the limit. There is a series of songs here that is called Transcendence, and there's the Eins, Zwei und Drei, and I think these 3 tracks should be an album by itself, and it will be a fucking killer album. The other songs are good. I'm not saying anything against it. I don't have anything negative to say about Paisage d'Hiver as a whole, but I don't think the other tracks are as good as the Transcendence series. And like he did with, let's say, the series of Schnee that was also released, Schnee 1, 2, 3, it could be the Transcendence album rather than Die Berge. Although it's a very enjoyable album, it gets a bit too long. It has almost 2 hours in length, and yeah, it is not as good as Winterkälte or even the compilation of Schnee, but definitely better than the previous album that he released. That might be his lowest point, although it's still good. And since I was talking about Paisage d'Hiver, let's talk also about Dark Space, which is Swiss project, also from the same guy from Paisage d'Hiver. In Paisage d'Hiver, his alias is Windherr, so like the Lord of Winter. I think that in Dark Space he has a different alias, like a more spacey one. -2, this is their newest EP, although it feels released like a long time ago because they were playing live the set, playing only the -2 for a while before they released this album. So I saw them live twice before this came out, so I already knew the track. It's only one track, 40 minutes track, side A and B. And yeah, it communicates a lot with the EP-1 that they released, and although I was expecting more to be something more in the vein of 1, 2, and 3, the real full lengths, this is a great album, but it lacks of something that their main series of full lengths have, that I don't know what it is. And yeah, it's a good album, 2 solid releases, but coming from Who Came, I know it could be better. Alright, let's talk about this project that was so fun to read before anything officially came out, because there was a lot of online speculation about this being AI generated or not, or some famous musicians being behind it or not. And when it came out, I know there was not so many people talking about it, but when you like this kind of music, it becomes a bubble that you feel like everyone is talking about it. And I'm talking about Neon Nightmare, Faded Dream. This album is a typo negative tribute, some would call typo negative rip-off, released by 20 Buck Spin. And it's a solo project by, I think his name is Nate Garrett. I mean, he's got a very famous YouTube channel here. For those who are not familiar with, he's got this show that is called Big Riff Energy. I will link it here. And what can I say? This is a typo negative tribute, so it has all the cliches that typo negative had. Although the lyrics are not so good with the sense of humor that Peter Steele used to have, but if you're listening to it for the first time, it sounds exactly the same. The chord progressions, this break in the middle of a sound that changes into something and then comes back, is a very fun album to listen to. I'm not the kind of person who says like I like listening to fun metal records, although this one was very enjoyable. I've got one of the variants that was available for purchase here in Europe. Although I know that in the US there are different colors that I couldn't find here. And yeah, this is a great band for everyone who likes typo negative. We'll listen to it, we'll notice exactly what I'm talking about in the first 10 seconds. It's very enjoyable and very well done. It's a good tribute. And I think that the guys from Typo Negative, they are still alive. If they check this out, they'll be like, oh, that's a good homage. Especially considering that, I don't know, Pale Horse Named Death is not a good band, as Typo Negative used to be. And this emulates in a very, how to say, not exactly with high fidelity, but close enough. I think this is also an American band. This resolution on the print of the cover doesn't look so good, but this is a band that has been in a hype recently. I'm talking about Castle Rat, doom metal band, female vocals, has some theatrical part of it. They talk about the past, I guess. So they have like one actress as their stage presence, which is the bringer of past, if I don't know. Wait. I think somewhere here it is written the name. Oh well, here they don't have aliases on the album. I know that when you check online, they have like the Witch Doctor, the Past Doctor, the Rat Queen, or things like that. And this, it sounds a little bit like Lucifer, in a sense, so very doomish, a bit rock and rollish, and yeah, for fans of the early metal scene, this is a great album, and it brings me some of Jack's Thoughts vibe. And being a big Jack's Thought fan, as I am, it was a great discovery for the year. Didn't make to the top 10 though, but yeah, I would probably enjoy seeing this band live more than everything else, because I think all the songs here have so much energy that they will probably work better live than just listening it to the album. And with all the theatrical part of it, I think it should work very well on stage as well, and I hope to be able to see them quite soon. Although if they're from the US, touring in Europe is not so easy nowadays, I guess, especially with the economic recession that we're being through. But anyways, it's still more doable than many other countries outside of Europe and America in general. So, moving along, let's talk about some Friends albums. Last year, my favorite album was Corrosion of Hearts by Austere. This one, they came out with a new one, Beneath the Threshold. Nice picture here. It's funny that Tim moved to Siberia and now he's adopting the Gopnik aesthetic, wearing this Adidas sweatshirt. I'm always suspect to talk about Austere. This one is a good album, although it is not as good as the previous one. I always enjoy when I put it to listen, and it always has this depressive black metal vibes, sometimes even a little bit of post black metal vibes, more than the previous one. The previous one was more straightforward black metal, not so modern. I mean, when I say modern, some people might take it as a bad thing, but in case of Austere, it works very well. And yeah, Beneath the Threshold, I should listen more to this album, especially considering that I'm good friends with both Tim and Mitch. But I am still, every time I listen to it, I'm still craving for listening to the previous albums that, in my opinion, are a bit better. So, next one, also Friends band, Firtan Ethos. This one was released by AOP Records, Art of Propaganda. And, well, last year we toured with Firtan, so became close after that. They used to be a typical pagan black metal band, and although you can still hear it resonating here, you can see that they shifted towards a more traditional approach of black metal. There's a song here that Lucas, the singer of Elender, sings, and this song it's my favorite song on the album, and it sounds very much like Hálios as well, as I mentioned, the Melino album. This riffing, which is one of the, let's say, probably future tendencies of black metal, as Paracletus from Deathspell Omega was to the black metal 10-15 years ago. And although it gives me a vibe of a transitory album, so I'm hoping to listen to anything new from Firtan that is more well defined. Here you can see that they started departing from point A, although I still think that it needs a little bit more to reach to the point B. But the ideas here are fabulous, and there are some great elements. I think that Clara on violin is a very good element for this band, because the times in which you least expect it comes like some classical vibes to it, and that sums up to the atmosphere. And it's a good album, although the singles are better than the final result, in my modest opinion. Moving forward, so this is a band that I grew up loving, and I might say this is one of my 10 favorite bands, and it's such a shame that some things happened to this band precisely this year after the release of this album, and now they are touring with a different singer, which might be a bit controversial. I'm talking about Mortal Binding by My Dying Bride, and this is solid, their best work since Songs of Darkness, Words of Light, which was released 18 years ago. And it has more of this death doomish vibes that they used to have, more than this gothic doom vibes that they were playing in the last 18 years, I would say. Aaron's vocal, as well as Opeth, he went back on growling more than what I expected to hear in any new My Dying Bride album. And I think in this case it was a more pleasurable surprise than it was with Opeth. It's a death doom metal album, of course, still with the gothic elements that they used to have. If you heard only the single that they released for this album, it sounded like their previous albums, the more gothic ones. But once you put it to play entirely, it is crushing. I saw Aaron briefly this year in this concert that I mentioned that we played in the UK, Fortress Festival in Scarborough. And I always think within myself, like, how can a guy that sings about such misery can be so kind and funny in real life? Yeah, so anyways, everyone loves a classic. My Dying Bride is a classic, and I love this album, not as much as I love their early work, of course, but I would say that was a very pleasurable surprise, especially for someone who loves Songs of Darkness, Words of Light, and The Dreadful Hours. It sounds more or less like that to me. Moving forward, this is once again the last album of my recommendations that is not on my top 10. I got it as a gift from a friend, Tatiana, and she gave me a special box that came in vinyl, cassette, and CD. And since I have the vinyl, I didn't even remove from the shrink the CD version and the tape version. I'm talking about Dual, The Shape of Fluidity. Alright, it's a bit hard to get the right position here, so the logo and the name are only on the hype sticker. Yeah, this is a special edition. As I mentioned, it comes with everything, hand numbered. It is hard to describe this band as well. I wouldn't consider them a metal band by any means. It reminds me sometimes of Placebo, although I know that that's not exactly what they're intending to sound. It has some dark vibes to it. It has some rockish spirit to it. and it's very enjoyable to listen. I was not expecting that when I got that, because I know most of the bands from Prophecy Productions here in Germany, and I was expecting something more post black metalish, or maybe more depressive sounding, or what they call ethereal wave. And it was not the case. It was, I don't know, as I said, hard to describe, but very enjoyable. And those are my recommendations for the year. And right now I'm gonna talk about my personal top 10, which, of course, is a very personal thing, so I'm not expecting anyone to say like, oh, you're saying a lot of bullshit, or oh, this is the definitive thing, because this is a very personal stuff, and like every list is. I'm not trying to say that these are the best metal albums. They're just my favorites, and therefore, in my opinion, the best. I'll start from the top 10 and then we'll go to the top 1. First one was an album I expected to be in my top 3, which was the new Spectral Voice album, Sparagmos. I don't know how to properly pronounce the name of it. Sparagmos. Anyways, Spectral Voice is a let's say death metal band, doomish, from the US. It's, I don't know if you can call it a side project or just another band with some guys from Blood Incantation. And I would say that this is the follow-up of Australian's Disembowelment. It's very extreme, very cavernous death metal in a very doomish vibe. And yeah, although it made to my top 10, it's not as good as the first album. But the first album, I would say it's probably one of the best doom metal albums of the last 20 years. So it was a high bar that they set for themselves. And although everyone who knows who these guys are up to know that their bar is very high, and they did brilliant, but it could be a little better. It could be as good as the first one. Moving along, this is a German band, although the singer, guitar player, main composer is Brazilian. I don't know him. I don't think I have any mutual friends with him, although somehow related background. It's called Markgraf. This album is called Hohenbaden. And yeah, that's the guy. I think his name is Hálios. His alias is ódio, which means hate in Portuguese. This album, it is even hard to describe. It has some Merciful Fate vibes to it, although it's a black metal album. It has some Master's Hammer vibe to it. It also has some Malokarpatan. I think that's the easiest comparison to do musically. Although the voice sounds 100% like Kirith Ungol, like this doomish, shrieky, sometimes even funny, you know, for people that are into these doomish bands that has like this odd voice. Not only doomish bands, you can hear that on Manual Road as well, Pagan Altar. I mean, not now that Brandon is singing there, but in the past. This album only grows with every listen and is as good as its art cover. And sometimes it gives me some King Diamond vibes, some Merciful Fate vibes. This is metal as metal should be, you know? Just an avalanche of riffings and good musicality and good music structure. And I became a big fan from the first minute I heard that, and I couldn't recommend more this album because everybody should listen to it. This is a band that should be attendance for metal that's been done in the recent years. So, moving ahead. Next one. Black Curse. Burning Celestial Poison. As I mentioned when I showed the tape of Furoforms, my favorite albums of the year were very much into this dissonant vibe, mixing of black, death and thrash, very brutal, very wall of sound, noisy in a way. Black Curse is probably one of the best albums released this year. They are an American band. You can also call them war metal, in the vein of Titan Blood, Archgoat, Revenge. And yeah, this album doesn't allow you to breathe. It's just straight in your face, loud and extreme metal. And I fucking love every second of it. It's been released by Sepulchral Voice here in Germany. That's why although it's been an American band, it was easy to find here in Europe. And yeah, recommend it to everyone. The next band sounds a little bit more like Black Curse, but more trashy. I would say that rather than Black Death, this will be more Black Thrash. Female vocals hailing from the UK. Adorior, Bleed on My Teeth. And this band has been active for 30 years now. It has very strong Angel Corpse vibes to it, sadistic execution, and this cover album, I think it's censored on most of the streaming platforms. Maybe it will be censored here on YouTube as well. Who cares? This is a fucking killer album. It has this glossy finish, this gold foil logo and track list. One of my favorite releases of the year. And yeah, Adorior, I don't know how to properly pronounce it as well. So many bands that are hard to pronounce this time. Anyways, that's the beauty of metal. It's been done everywhere. And moving forward, this one it was my favorite album of the year by the time it was released, and others started outgrowing it. The artwork is as beautiful as it sounds. Its band is called Secrets, Towards the Nightside, and it's well known for their guitar player, Svartadaltus, that has so many different projects in Scandinavian black metal in general. And I would say that the same thing as Neon Nightmare is for Typo Negative. This is to Emperor's first album. It has this symphonic black metal vibes, very much influenced by the early Norwegian black metal sounds of the early 90s. Sometimes a little bit lo-fi in the production, and it's brilliant. I think that the title Towards the Nightside also makes a reference to In the Nightside Eclipse, and I wish I could show you properly the artwork for this album. That is such a killer. And yeah, for everyone who's a big Emperor fan like me, stop everything that you're doing. Stop this video. Fuck me. I don't care. You know? Go listen to it. This is brilliant. And I think it's their first album. I hope to listen to more from them. Hopefully their second album will be a tribute to Anthems to the Walking at Dusk. Let's see. This was also released by a German label, Amor Fati. And yeah, great band, Secrets. Don't think they ever played live, but I hope if they play, they come to Germany at some point. So, next one. Bum, 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 which is a band from Slovakia, Ceremony of Silence. I think it is, I don't know if I could say that this band is more, more dissonant than the others that I showed before, like Black Curse and Adorior. That's for sure. It follows this dissonance of Deathspell Omega, and even from the first two albums of Gorguts, in a more death metal way, I would say. I mean, like Gorguts, but not as technical. Like Deathspell Omega, but not as black metal. So for those that like dissonant death metal, Hálios. I don't know how to pronounce it as well, of course. Hálios, from Ceremony of Silence, is one of the greatest surprises of the year to me. I never heard about them before this year, and listening to this album was such a great experience because it totally blew my mind from the first minute. They have like this marble effect on the vinyl that when you buy it, you don't even know the color that they are sending it to you, which is, I think, a fun effect, especially right now that people buy records mostly for the cosmetic aspect of it. I'm like, I don't care, man, I just want to listen to the music. You could send it any color you can. And yeah, it's a great album. I strongly recommend that for people that might like my following suggestions. So I am entering the top 4 now already. Yeah, I thought I was entering top 5, but Ceremony of Silence was the top 5. Next one is also a dissonant death metal band, but in this case they have some influences. I don't know if that's the proper word. It has some electronic vibes to it on the interludes, which is Defacement, Duality. And for those who listen to Defacement's previous album, that is a self-titled one, and it follows more or less the structure. So one long track, one interlude, and this interlude has a lot of experimental, I wouldn't say if electronics is the proper way of calling it. I'm not familiarized with electronic music, but it has some weird, odd soundings, alien soundings to metal, to the death metal that they play. And Duality is a killer record. I think it is as good as the previous one. And yeah, they're from the Netherlands. I think 2 guys from the band, Ahmed and Khalil, they're from Libya originally, or their family hails from Libya, and they live in the Netherlands. This is, it's hard to describe. It's just a wall of information with dissonance, and it's extreme and heavy, but maybe not as extreme and heavy as my top 3 album on this list, which is the new album by the Finnish Concrete Winds. I know that this album is in the top 10 of a lot of people, and very well deserved. Also released by Spectral Voice, who put out the Black Curse album, and even the artwork somehow matches this red and black. It's a very minimal artwork, but it doesn't need more than that. This is a hell of an avalanche when you listen to it. And I don't know, it reminds me of Sarcophago, and I saw them live. They were very young, probably years younger than me, and I bought this on their gig in Berlin. I went to Berlin just to see them, and it was a great surprise because the bands that played before were also very good, although I didn't get anything from the previous bands that I could show, except for a tape from another band, but it was not released this year, so I'm skipping it. Anyways, great album, Concrete Winds. Everyone who's into bestial war metal, check this out, especially if you like Sarcophago as much as I do. So, number 2, also dissonant death metal. You know what I'm talking about, right? Cutting the Throat of God, Ulcerate from New Zealand. After the previous one, it was hard to expect that they could keep up with something so good. But they did. They did. I would say that in general, this should be one of the best bands in activity right now. And it also has red and black artwork. And yeah, the previous one, Staring to Death and Be Still, I think it was one of the biggest hypes in the death metal of the last, 10 years. And this one is as good or maybe even better than the previous one. And this drummer, man, he should be arrested. You can't be that good. He shouldn't be allowed to be as good as he is. They played here in Europe. I couldn't catch them. Unfortunately, I had to work or I was playing. I don't know. I know that my time schedule I couldn't fit to see them, but I hope to see them the next year. I know that they will be playing, if I'm not wrong, in Scarborough, where I played this year, which is a festival that I'm trying to go. And if you need a suggestion, which festival should I attend? Go to Fortress Festival in Scarborough. It's probably one of the most well organized, with such a killer lineup, perfect venue, great atmosphere in general. From the festivals I played this year, it was probably my highlight, and therefore I would tell everyone to go there, especially knowing that Agalok will be playing there and Ulcerate as well. And this is a killer band, Ulcerate. Don't have much more to say about it except for the fact that this is a killer. And last but not least, I don't know what I can say more about this album that hasn't been spoken of already. Everyone is talking about this album, and for a reason. This is probably one of the most innovative works in the extreme metal in the recent years, which is Absolute Elsewhere by Blood Incantation, my album of the year. Great artwork, as always. And to be honest, I was not much of a big fan of Blood Incantation. I always used to make a joke saying like, oh, Blood Incantation is this not so good band from the guys of the very good band Spectral Voice. And yeah, Hidden History of the Human Race was a hype. I know everybody was talking about it, and after that they released a more, I don't know if it was an ambient album, but it was not metal, it was more electronic. And right now they managed to mix this electronic Tangerine Dream vibes, like this Berliner school vibe bands, like this krautrock, that I don't even like this title krautrock, because most of the good kraut bands are not rock at all. And in Germany people call it kosmische Musik, which I think, you know, it's very relatable to Blood Incantation's new album. And of course you still have all the old school death metal riffings here, and it also has some progressive rock from the 70s vibes. Sometimes I don't know, I was playing it at my work and some people even came to ask if it was Pink Floyd. So you can see that this is a very unique album, and you probably heard it already 1,000 times, and if you haven't done, just go after and check it right now. And I think that for now I'm only missing one album here. Of course, I don't know, this is another honorable mention. It's not on my top 10, but it could be, and I think this might be their best work since 1990. Some would say that the previous one was a bit better, but that's a matter of opinion, which is the new Judas Priest, Invincible Shield. Talking about metal, not talking about Judas Priest is a mistake. So, just wanted to talk about the metal gods before this video is over. And I am so glad that after 50 years these guys are still making such incredible music. The title track, Invincible Shield, As God Is My Witness, and Crown of Horns, so many good tracks on this album. And yeah, now that I started reading the track list again, I'll just put it to play before I go to sleep. And yeah, and I don't know, I think that's all I had to say. I might see you in 1 year from now, and I'm not sure if anyone reached to this point of the video. It's a long one, yes, I know, and I don't have the time, I don't have the patience, I don't have the discipline, above all, to keep up with making videos to this channel. But I thank everyone who came to the very end, and if you like it, then I don't know, give a like, subscribe, I don't know, whatever. But write in the comments your favorite albums and things that you think that I missed. I'm gonna put a sheet with my 50 favorite albums from the year. Only the top 10 are in order, the others are sorted alphabetically. I would like to show one of the purchases I did that, I don't know, I did it on the pre-order and still being delayed for delivery, which is the band that I tend to say that I'm the only fan, which is a Portuguese band called Finalized Infernalium, and their new album is called Pérfida Contração do Aço. Check this out as well, in case you haven't heard. Traditional black metal from the 80s, although made recently, but the band started in the very early 90s, so it gives them credibility for doing what they're doing. That's it, and happy 2025 everyone, and I hope that next year the releases are as good as this year. For me, this year was the best year in the last, I don't know, 5 years. Definitely better than this, definitely the best year ever since I started doing this yearly reports of favorite albums. And yeah, probably new Duality album next year, probably new Outlaw album next year, So we might catch up on the road somewhere. Cheers!